The U.S. Congress held its first hearing today on unidentified flying objects, or UFOs. There's been a push from both Democrats and Republicans to declassify information from the U.S. military. So, what will that mean for Canada? MJ Banias is a Winnipeg writer, UFO author, and co-founder of The Debrief. It's a website dedicated to exploring frontiers in science and innovative technology. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What are your thoughts on the U.S. government pushing to declassify documents on UFOs?
Yeah, well, I mean, we had an interesting moment today where, three whistleblowers stepped forward, two fighter pilots and a long-time serving intelligence official come forward and kind of said, there is a lot of stuff that's been buried by classification when it comes to the UAP or UFO question. And, fundamentally, they've basically asked Congress to start looking to basically take measures to start trying to declassify some of this stuff. We need to remember, the United States government is not one thing, right? It's not some big monolithic organization. It's made up of, multiple agencies, thousands of employees. So not everyone knows, what everyone else is doing. So we have this kind of now interesting situation where Congress is going to attempt to kind of wade into the darkness of kind of UFO classification and secrecy and try to kind of uncover what they can find. It's been a wild day today in the UFO space.
Mm-hmm. What are your takeaways from the hearings that happened today?
Yeah, there was, a lot of interesting things that came up. At the debrief, we're the ones who ran the story initially. We broke the story concerning Mr. Grush and his claims, and fundamentally, we just report on the facts. There were a few kind of interesting, novel things that we heard today. The main one kind of that was very unique was that these three men were under oath when they gave their testimony. And you can't go to Congress and lie. That comes with fines and jail time. So first, this was all done under oath, which is a pretty big deal. The second thing that came out of this hearing was that, a lot of these UAP programs, whether they exist or not, are buried deep kind of into parts of classifications where, even members of Congress don't necessarily have access. Mr. Grush went on record and under oath stating that, they have purposefully been lied to, and they've stated that there are private contractors, defense contractors out there, that have kind of purposefully misappropriated funds to do research and development into kind of this mysterious technology. So these were a couple big claims that were made. The last one was that according to Mr. Graves, who is an who's an F-18 pilot for the U.S. Navy, he runs an organization for aviators to basically come forward with sightings of UAP. He basically made the claim, again under oath, that certain airlines, commercial airlines, the ones we all fly on sort of, all the time, basically have sort of gag orders on their pilots to basically not disclose if they have seen something in the sky that's sort of unknown. According to Mr. Graves, airlines have specifically told their pilots, if you do come out and say that you saw a UFO, or if you do report one to some sort of government agency, you will be punished. This is, again, kind of a big thing that was stated under oath before Congress. I mean, it's on the public record now. I mean, there's going to be a lot of ruffled feathers.
Mm-hmm. How will that impact declassifying UFO documents here in Canada?
Yeah, well, Canada's kind of a funny country. We tend to kind of sit back and let the Americans take the lead on most defense issues. And at the debrief, we believe that the UFO question is a defense issue. Again, we can't comment on the origin of UFOs or UAP, but, if they're operating in airspace, they shouldn't be. That's protected. It is technically a defense issue. And Canada is kind of slow to act. I'll be honest. We don't have a very good reporting system here. All the records that are public are accessible online right now. Any member of the public listening to the show could just literally type in CIRVIS and UFO in Google, and they would get to sort of every UFO report that comes in. But they find that, they're pretty lacking. There's not much there. Our radar operators here don't take much data. There's not much investigation done into UFOs. So, whatever files do exist, they're probably going to be military files, and they're probably going to be classified. Everything else isn't really looked into. So there's not going to be much out there for Canadians to kind of try and work to declassify. But when it comes to government files, it's going to really require push from members of parliament. We know Larry Maguire from Brandon Souris, he's an MP. He's, kind of taken the lead on pushing the government to start having more UAP-related discussions. But until we sort of reach a critical mass, I think, within government, as well as the public kind of pushing for this information to come out, we're not going to see very much.
How many UFOs have there been sighted in Canada that you know of?
Well, grand total is a tough number to get to, but we know that, on average per year, reported to various, collection agencies that sort of collect UFO data, from the general public, we'll see, between 1,000, 2,000 a year. And, sometimes there's big years, we'll have closer to the 4,000, 5,000 mark. But when it comes to, aviators, so whether they're military, whether they're commercial pilots, military personnel, that type of thing, that number really shrinks down to a handful, a few dozen a year that are made sort of to either Transport Canada or to the Department of National Defense or other sort of aviation industries or agencies. So it's not much, but the fact that they do happen should still be kind of raising some alarm bells. I mean, we need to remember, whatever these things are, whether they're balloons or drones or some sort of experimental aircraft, they are operating in airspace that, you and I fly in on, regularly. So if our pilots are seeing things that they don't recognize, that should be pause for concern.
What's missing from the UFO conversation? What should Manitobans be talking about?
We want to kind of take the stigma out of the UFO question or the UAP question. We don't know what UAP are. So to assume or make assumptions that they're, let's say, aliens or something like that's kind of silly. We don't have enough data yet to make that leap. But what we do know is that there's a lot of reports of UAP. We have a lot of evidence that there's, whether it's video evidence or radar evidence of things operating in our airspace that shouldn't be there. I think Canadians need and Manitobans need to just sort of take a pause on the alien kind of flying saucer conversation. Let's hit the brake on that. And let's just pivot to a more scientific conversation and a more kind of real conversation concerning the fact that, well, there's things in our airspace we can't always identify. The government, whether it's the military or law enforcement, have trouble identifying them as well. Aviators have trouble identifying them. So we need to kind of, I guess, devise a way that we as Canadians can have this conversation without engaging in the stigma of ET and just looking at the topic from a scientific viewpoint.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today.
Oh, it was great. Thank you so much for having me.
MJ Banias is a Winnipeg writer, UFO author, and co-founder of The Debrief. It's a website dedicated to exploring frontiers in science and innovative technology.
Thank you for watching the CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For the latest breaking news and top stories, download the CBC News app.